Welcome all. I'm your life old man, Fat Boy style. Today I'm gonna do a little bit different video. Today I'm gonna talk about military history. We all love military history. Love reading military books, watching military shows, reading military stuff online. Especially there are a lot of great military magazines, but there's a problem with, especially with military magazines. Once again, welcome all. Comment, like, share. The problem with military history in general is it's not really military history. It's really European military history. They always talk about the same thing: Greece, Macedonia, or Greece versus the Persians, the Romans, Punic Wars, Middle Ages, Crusades, the Napoleonic era, Frederick the Great, the Duke of Marlborough, Duke of Wellington, Nelson, the exploration of America and fights there, the colonial wars throughout the world. They even talk about Vikings and the invasion of England a lot. World War One, World War Two, of course. And when there are a few stories in Asia, Africa, the Americans, um, even Australia, it's always um, when the Europeans militaries are invading or fighting a revolt or some type of war. The British fighting something in India, Afghanistan, the French, the Germans, or anyone fighting in Africa. The U.S. current struggles throughout the Middle East. It's just always not really about the history of military in those areas. It's only talked about when they're fighting European. And military history is very diverse. There's a lot of military history that's happened throughout the world that has nothing to do with anybody that lived in Europe. Um, there's a lot of combat that happened, especially in China, India, Southeast Asia, Australia, the Native Americans. These people weren't just peaceful, getting along with each other. They've had wars, battles, and conflicts that are the largest and some of the longest running in world history. And there's historical data out there now. We just don't write enough stories about it. Today I'm going to focus in on Strategy and Tactic magazine. It's one of my favorite military history magazines. They do a great job, great articles, in depth, well written, great illustrations. Overall, it's a great magazine. But the problem is, it only focuses in on stuff that has to do with Europeans. Um, like I said, it's a great magazine, though. But as you can see from some of the covers, we got the mutiny in India. You can see the Crusades. They have an article in there about Vikings. They got a small, tiny battle in Africa where a British unit is fighting Africans. It's a great story, um, but with all the world military history out there, is it really worth being the featured story? That you have to go to smaller and smaller advanced battles to make those front page issues when you really haven't even brushed the tip of the iceberg. Um, Examples. In 250 BC, huge, well, around 250, 200 BC, the upheaval in China. Millions of people died. Hardly any stories about it, anything written about it. Um, in the modern time, the conflict in the Congo area, it's probably the most bloody that's happened in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s. Not a peep, nothing. I mean, um, that these are just examples, but we'll move on. We'll start off with Strategy and Tactic Quarterly magazine. I think these are great magazines. They only come out every quarter. They focus in on a specific topic. It's well written. They're great magazines in themselves. The only problem is, um, so far every issue has been about, you guessed it, something that happened to a European versus another European, or versus the Crusades. This is example. This is about the French Foreign Legion and its history. Great magazine, loved it. But is it really something that you want to put in your quarterly magazine? Out of all the topics in the world history, this is one of them. And it's not just that one. The American Revolution. That's another one. These are just examples. The Tet Offensive. So as you see, and the rest of them, they got the Crusades. They've got World War II, and not even have World War II. They have Barbarossa. They've all. I mean, it's just. I mean, come on. But like I said, go out. These are great quarterly magazines. It's just a little bit more diversity in the history of the world. Next up, the original magazine itself, Strategy and Tactics. As you can see with the three covers here, one's about the end of the Middle Ages, the siege of Constantinople or Istanbul now, the Ottoman Empire, fighting in the Mediterranean, basically, the Triple Alliance War, but also that one of the newer issues, the Banana Wars, conflicts in South America. Didn't talk about South America until, I guess, Europeans arrived. No military history before that. The Korean War. This was actually a really great issue, but once again, Korea has had a very deep and diverse history. One of the greatest military minds of all time is a Korean, and he fought against the Japanese. But you wouldn't really know that if you just read military history magazines. And here's another one. I showed it earlier, Mutiny in India against the British. It made the cover. It's about India, but once again, it's about from a European and local revolt issue. Not really. India is another country, or we could just say the subcontinent itself, has a very rich history of military warfare. From the beginning, this place has been deeply divided by culture, class, religion, outside groups, has a rich history of conflict with its neighbors to the east, west, the north, especially to the north. And you just don't hear about it. Now we're going to go on to modern warfare. Believe it or not, this magazine actually really does a good job. It's one of Strategy and Tactics newer magazines. Once again, all of them are well written. This one actually has a little bit more diversity in it. It talks mainly about modern warfare, and it's done a pretty good job of talking about conflicts throughout the world, militaries throughout the world, political events that lead to conflicts throughout the world. Done a great job. Out of all of them, I would say this one's doing the second best out of the four main magazines this corporation has. All of them have great stories. But as far as giving a broader understanding of military history throughout the world, this one's doing a really great job. Here, you see on the cover on the right, you see China and its global naval strategy. They've really emphasized a lot on China now because it's really modernized its forces and its capabilities, the power project throughout the world. You also see something you rarely see in history books and in magazines, especially in Europe and North America, something that has absolutely nothing to do with them. Other than maybe selling weapons and the platform itself. Cold Start, the next India-Pakistan war. It's refreshing to see something like this. It's just between two non-European nations that might have a problem with each other. Might end up with blows being thrown, things like that. It goes into depth both at the tactical and strategic level for each one of these nations and how things would fare. Once again, Modern Magazine, they have amazing. They also have great stories, what if stories. What if Russia goes to war with China? What if Korea has conflicts against China? What if Japan has conflicts against China, with and without the United States? So it goes into a little bit of the more in-depth things that are actually happening in Asia from their point of views. Overall, sometimes they have stuff like this, but overall, it's a more balanced because it talks about different militaries throughout the war. This one's about the French Foreign Legion paratroopers, basically. Um, East Asia, the geopolitical focal point, Korea. And it's not just North Korea versus South Korea and the United States. It also, like I said, talks about China's involvement and Russia's involvement, and even a little bit about Japan's strategic position. But then we'll go to their last magazine out of the four, uh, World at War, basically their World War II era magazine. This one does absolutely the best job. Um, like once again, a lot of really resource magazines, but they've more and more started to talk about the conflict in Japan and China. Everyone knows about the terrible cost of lives to our Jewish brothers and sisters out there. We also know about the huge, more and more that you see in modern times, they're talking more and more about the Eastern conflict and how the USSR basically destroyed the German army. But it took maybe 29 to maybe 50 USSR citizens and soldiers to do it. But now you're seeing in the World at War magazine, they're talking about the second largest part of the conflict, the Japanese versus Chinese part. And they actually have different magazines where it's the headline feature, and they have a lot of smaller stories in a bunch of different magazines. How the Japanese army won some battles, lost some battles, how there was an ongoing civil war going on at the same time, and just the sheer scale of the war. Next to the USSR, China lost the second most amount of people and soldiers. And between their losses and the next nation, it's not even close. So it's Russia, China, and then like the rest of the world almost combined. I mean, those two places lost the majority. Those two countries lost the majority of both civilian and military life. And in both cases, China basically just sucked all of Japan's manpower. Of course, the USSR bled the German army white. Once again, it's a great. They still talk mostly about the U.S. versus Japan in here, things like that. But at the same time, they have a good diversity, and within, even though, like I said, even though they have some good main issues, well, I should say features, but they also have a lot of great stories within. And if you look at here, you see the German planned invasion of Turkey. Yeah, it's about the Europeans possibly. It also talks about the Allies trying to sway Turkey to join either side. But that's something you rarely hear about history, so I added it to it. You see in the second one, the center one, it's a major battle between the Japanese and the Chinese. Went right down to the wire. And then on the left, the Shanghai invasion, 1937, Japanese kicking it off against the Chinese. Overall, like I said, all of their magazines for all four titles, for both Modern Warfare, World at War, Strategic and Tactics, and Strategic and Tactical, well written. This is a great magazine company. They just need to do a little diversity. So, and seeing all this, cause I really didn't realize it till like a couple years ago. I've been a subscriber. I have just about almost all their magazines. Didn't really realize the one day it just dawned on me. So I sent them an email. You can pretty much read it for yourself. Dear S&T, love your articles and magazines, but there is far too much focus on European warfare and European fighting and wars across the globe. There's a ton of military conflicts in Asia, Africa, just dealing with the people from those areas and their military history. Exactly what I've just been talking about, for blabbling on. Sorry about that. And since it deals with military events from ancient times to present, in its issues, I don't see why it has to focus on Europe so much. There's so much info about China, Korea, India, and Africa, especially nowadays. Because before, early in history, you didn't have all this access for political reasons, also some racial issues, historians not wanting to do it. But now we have so much more history, so much more information that there's no reason for 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 military history to not have this included in articles, in academia, in school. Like I said, some of the largest battles in history, some of the largest wars in history have been fought in places that people really don't know about. I mean, more people know about Ragnar Lothbrok than they know about, I'm not going to say his name, but he was a military commander in Korea. He beat the tar out of the Japanese. I mean, other than Genghis Khan, Shaka Zulu, Hannibal, and a few others, they basically talk about the same people over and over and over again. Even when they talk about the Persians, they talk about Darius and Xerxes, but they don't really talk about Cyprus. And his name was Cyprus the Great for a reason. Think about it. And this is just the first part of the email. Now, and then I just went to talk about in details about some of their magazines. I talked about the Strategy and Tactic Quarterly. It's the worst when dealing with it, and these are some of the other issues. I showed you earlier some of the new issues. These are the first issues. Barbarossa, American World War One, Stalingrad. What if World War III happened? The French Foreign Legions, D-Day, Crusades, the Tet Offensive. I have all these, and I even have the one with the American Revolution. Like I said, all well written and great, but you see a pattern there. Like I said earlier, Modern Warfare did a better job, and this is all in one email. I just broke it up on a slide so you can better see it. And then I talked about the Amazing World War II, World at War, which is about World War II. And then I just said in history, in short, military history events have happened across the world throughout history. There are articles and stories waiting for your amazing magazine to write about. And that's my point. This is a great publishing company. There's a lot of military history they should be writing about, but they just haven't. And very respectful, Kareem Abdul-Aziz. And I will give them credit. Like I said, great magazine. And guess what? They replied back. Now, I'm not going to put the person's name on it because I don't know who may see the video. But they replied back. Good morning. Thank you for your input. Most of us here completely agree with you, but we have to publish what the owners choose. So unfortunately, it is them that you have to get through. I will forward your email to them and the editor so that they can see this opinion. Thank you again. Don't know if it ever happened. Don't know if they were just sprinkling sugar on me, but they replied back in a timely manner, and I respect that. And like I said, the biggest issue is there's a lot more information about military history throughout the world out there. And we need to learn about it. So that way, hopefully by learning about it, you don't make some of the same mistakes in the future when dealing with people from different parts of the world. There are a lot of military traditions out there. A lot of just history that a lot of people don't know about because it's just not published. I can't be the only person that wants to hear about what happened in Vietnam and what in that area in 11 BC. I can't be the only one that wants to know about warfare, the development of the societies in Indonesia, in Korea, in Japan, in India, in Burma, in sub-Saharan Africa, Central Africa, the Sahara. It's more than just the Middle East, Greece, Rome, the Punic Wars, the Dark Ages, the Middle Ages. All the Vikings are coming. The late Middle Ages, gunpowder, Frederick the Great, Napoleon, the Age of Discovery, World War One, World War II, the U.S.'s conflicts throughout the modern world. Military history is more than that. We just have to explore it and write about it so people can understand it. And it'll help us as humans to better understand each other and our point of views. Um, in closing, thanks, and I hope you enjoyed. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Army Life Old Man Fat Boy style. You guys stay blessed. Have a great day.